and servants, right? They really don't have a division of labor, right? You have people who make wheels and all they do is make wheels. And you have people who are farmers and all they do are farmers. There's not really any division of labor. The next thing he said is this idea of invisible hand. He says people should pursue their own self-interest. Okay? Don't think about other people, think about yourself. Basically, greed is good. But if you do what you want, okay, you will send signals to other people and they will, let's say, provide you with something. And he says, look, the butcher who makes our meat, or the brewer who makes our beer, or the baker who makes our bread, doesn't do it because he's doing it for charity, or he cares about whether we eat or not. They're doing it because they want money, right? They're doing it because they want to get paid. And so the point is, what we do is we go to the store and we send the signal that we want bread, and we want meat, or we want beer, okay? And we do other things so we can produce enough money or enough goods to sell in exchange for what they have. So we don't say, look, we don't say, geez, be a nice person and feed me for free. You have food and I don't. We say, look, if you give me what I want, you know what, I'll give you something you want, like money. Okay? We don't talk to them of what we need. We talk to them about what they could get by doing what we want them to do. Right? If you make better beer, you make better bread, I'll buy it from you. And then, you'll get money or some other type of valuable items in return. And that's what the invisible hand is. If I say, for example, I want to buy 10,000 books, okay, that's sending a signal that someone goes, geez, crazy Mr. Brunelli wants 10,000 books, but someone will produce them for me. And if we all follow what we really like to do, the system will work together. But if we try to do this in a way where we try to predict, like, I think, what does this particular student want, or what does my colleague want, I'm probably going to muck it up. Because I really don't know what their self-interest is, and, I probably are going to misinterpret it. So the best thing I can do is just kind of be greedy and selfish and follow my own self-interest and not really think about other people. And so this is the quote. And he says, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from regard to their own self-interest, to their own interest. They intend only their own gain, and they are in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of their intention. Nor is it always the worst of society that it was no part of it. By pursuing their own interest, they frequently promote that of society more effectually than when they really intend to promote it. Basically what Adam Smith is saying is intentions don't matter. It's not what you intend to do. It's not good intentions that make societies wealthy and happy. It's actually everyone doing their own selfish self-interest. And so it's not that we intend to help other people that we do it. In fact, we do better when we don't intend to help other people, when we intend only to help ourselves. Now, the third part of Adam Smith's theory is this idea of free labor. And the idea is that if you want to know really how valuable something is, it's the amount of work that it takes to produce it. So why is gold expensive? Well, gold is expensive because it takes a lot of people to dig it out of the ground. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of education, it takes a lot of money, and that's what makes it valuable. It's not because people want it, it's not because it's scarce, it's the amount of effort that goes into providing it. So, for example, a really tasty meal might take more effort or more skill, or basically more time, than something that is, let's say, easier to make. So basically, labor is a source of economic value, but it has to be free to be guided by the invisible hand to kind of all work together. Now, this cartoon here is after the American Civil War, and you can see Lincoln in the background, and that free labor, both for the African American slaves, but also for, let's say, the Southern former soldiers and plantation owners, if they are freed by the Civil War, they're going to be a lot more productive than they were under the old slavery system. And so basically free labor, which was a major part of Lincoln's ideas and also the policies of Republican policy at the time of the American Civil War, was actually kind of, let's say, why the North was more productive, why it was able to defeat the South, and now the South had, let's say, an incentive or, let's say, the ability to free themselves from, let's say, being masters and servants and to improve, let's say, their economic welfare. And so Adam Smith would say the real price of everything, what everything really costs, is not to the man who wants to acquire it, is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. What everything is really worth to the man who has acquired it and who wants to dispose of it or exchange it for something else is the toil and trouble which he can save to himself and which he can impose upon other people. So basically, when we look at a price, when we go to a store and we see, well, this is $5 or that's $15, it's not because it's popular, it's not because people demand it, it's basically about supply. How much effort do I have to put in to provide this to you? Now think of this in terms of two things. Air is pretty important to us. We all need it. We can't live without it. But you know what? I can't put like air in mason jars and expect to sell them to you, because you'd probably laugh at me. It's not because it's not valuable to you. It's not because you don't need it. But you know what? It doesn't take any effort for you to take in a breath of air. Okay? You can all take a breath of air in right now, and it doesn't require that much effort. And so you're not going to pay anyone a lot of money to provide air. Now, the other part to that is that some things that are not very important, like diamonds or gold, okay, are not particularly valuable. All right? No, we don't really need it. Diamonds really don't, well, I should take that back. In general, cosmetic jewelry and things of that sort that are very expensive, fur coats, a football jersey, not that important, but people spend lots of money to buy them. Now, the reason why we spend lots of money is because of all the work that goes into producing them. It takes a lot of effort to dig gold out of the ground, or to make jewelry, or to make famous art, and that's actually where we get the value from. It's the amount of labor that goes into producing it. Well, following Adam Smith, Adam Smith basically said, look, virtue is not happiness. Just because it's not virtuous doesn't mean it will make us happy. So the point is, if we want to, let's say, make people happy, which is saying giving them what they want, giving them food, giving them money, giving them a house over their head, it doesn't have to be virtuous behavior. Okay? Just because you're a good person doesn't mean it'll do that. And in fact, many times, being good is actually detrimental to making us all happy collectively. Well, the next generation of economists took it a little farther than that. They said actually doing good things is positively bad. If you're a good person, you give charity to the poor, you want to help, little baby seals, you want to hug babies, that's actually a bad thing. And this is where the idea there's no such thing as a free lunch comes out. The idea is the government tries to help people. They try to provide public health care. They try to provide education. If they try to provide everyone with a job, right? They really can't do that, because there's no such thing as a free lunch. If the government provides you something for free, they have to tax someone else and take something away from them. Now, the most famous of this was this guy here on the left, Thomas Malthus. And Thomas Malthus basically is famous for coining the phrase that economics is a dismal science, which means economics is really about telling us what we can't do. So Malthus was, the first thing that he studied was human population. And at the time in England in the early 1800s, one thing was very clear. England had become very rich, but there were a lot of people starving and a lot of poor people. Think of Charles Dickens and Oliver Twist and orphans begging for food on the streets, saying, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" And that was the world that Malthus was living in. And Malthus was wondering, why is this happening? Isn't England becoming richer than it ever was? Why do we have all these poor people that we never saw before? And what Malthus said is, look, if people get free food, they're going to live and they're going to do the natural thing, which is to have sex and produce children. And eventually we're going to have too many people and not enough food to feed them. So, look, if we give them food, then it's going to make things worse. Because first of all, they're going to live longer. And if they live longer, they're going to have more children. And those children will live to an older age. And then they're going to consume more resources. But if we give them the food free, there's no incentive for them to work, right? Why should I work when someone will give me what I want anyway without working? And what Malthus didn't call it this, but what we call it today is this moral hazard. For example, if you help someone do something, they won't learn how to do it themselves, they won't have any incentive to do it on their own, and therefore there's a moral hazard because they'll actually continue doing bad things. In particular, Malthus said, look, if you feed this hungry orphan, if you're a nice person and you give food to, let's say, a starving child, what you're going to do is actually make the world worse. Because that child's going to grow up, and that child's going to have children, and those children are going to want to eat, and that child you saved is going to want to eat, and they're going to use up more resources, and that's going to lead to environmental destruction, it's going to lead to famines, because it's an unlimited want. We all want to eat. We all want to have more food. But there's only so much food or so much land there to produce the food. So it's basically, as Malthus would say, it's unsustainable. And therefore we have to live within our means, and therefore we might have to let people die. So Malthus would say something along the lines of like, the best thing you could do for a starving person is to let him die, don't give him food, don't feed the animals. If you feed the animals, they'll just come back and want more food, and they won't learn how to go and hunt and get it for themselves, and that will make us all worse off. So basically, he says, yes, I'm a heartless bastard. If you feed the poor, they're just going to have children, they're not going to be able to support them, and they'll have no incentive to work if you give them a free lunch. Now, the other part to this was someone named David Ricardo, this guy on the right. And he was kind of made the argument for free trade. Why we don't, let's say, keep out the things made by foreigners from our own markets. He basically said, look, when you don't have free trade and you say, well, I'm only going to buy American goods, or I'm only going to buy British goods, we're actually making things worse, because basically we're giving people in our own country protection against market competition, right? Think of a mom and pop store, right? A little hardware store. And they're going to charge you really high prices because they have protection. But if you bring in Home Depot, they can offer you things cheaper, and then we'll all be better off because the money we would have spent on hammers and nails and wood, we can get it cheaper, we'll save more money, and we can go and spend that on something else. Like, we can go to the Barnes & Noble and spend money on the bookstore. So he says, though, when people are protected from competition, there's no reason for them to lower prices, which means they're going to make things more expensive for the rest of us. Now, particularly in England, they used to keep out food grown in other countries. Now, if you know England, it's not a very large island. There's not a lot of room to grow, which means food in England was really, really expensive. So even though England was making lots of gadgets and textiles and whatever in their factories, they didn't have enough land to grow food. And so food was very, very expensive in England. And because English consumers, English workers, couldn't buy food from other countries like the United States, who had too much food, and lower their prices. Now, this went on until the 1830s, 1840s, and they started to push for free trade. And free trade allowed, let's say, England